Hello everybody, very good morning for every person. So today before I go and explain you about English classes, what we've been learning last previous days. We were been learning about the body language, we were been learning about how to actually perform in an interview, half. Yes, we were been speaking and we were been learning about how to perform an interview at the interview level. Yes, initially we were been learning about a new subject, that is interviewing. Yes. So, when you go for an interview, how to actually prepare before you go for an interview, and while during interview what is that you just have to remember, and after the interview what you should be. So, today we will be having a basic introduction again about the interview workshop on what we have learnt yesterday. So, yes. So, career development is the most important thing that you have to remember, because when you do not know how to exactly do a communication at the interview point, obviously you will flunk the interview, isn't it? So, that is the most important thing that you have to remember when I speak about the interview and the career development. Obviously, the career will develop when you have a proper tips and do's on how to do an interview. So, today I am there to explain you about the do's and don'ts that you have to remember while and before the interview. So, let us have a quick view on what we were been learning yesterday in the interview workshop. So, if you can see the slide here, we have yes, interviewing workshop, and that is simply career development. When I speak about the career development, the most important thing that you have to remember is what is the first step or what are the objectives that we have been looking yesterday about it. So, if you can see here, we have objectives as to better understand the interview process, the before, during and after the interview. And the second point I was talking about was to be aware of the appropriate interviewing behaviors, and then we have to learn about behavioral interviewing and to practice interviewing skills. So, these were the few of the objectives what we were been revising yesterday on how to actually give an interview. Yes. So, these were the objectives. So, when I speak about the objectives, yes, I was telling you about you should have a better understanding about the interview process, that is before, during and after. So, always remember guys, when I speak about the objectives, the only thing that you have to remember is what and how are you getting prepared in interview, especially while during the interview, before the interview and after the interview. And then when I tell you about to be aware of the appropriate interviewing behavior, you just have to make sure how exactly you are behaving in the interview. For example, yes, when I say about how you are how you are actually behaving, or how exactly you are doing all this, yes, yesterday we were been in the half of the behaviors anyway. So, now we have goals of the interview. Yes, we have been learnt about the goals of the interview, and then we were been learning about the skills, qualities, actually those are being looking by the employers. I mean, what does the interviewer look in you? Obviously, the interview will happen with your abilities, communication skills, the technical knowledge that you have, and adaptability, and professional judgment on how exactly you are giving the output, or how exactly you are motivating yourself to have an interview. So, these are all the qualities that we should find in yourself when you are going for an interview. So, yes, the last thing that we have learnt yesterday was before the interview, and that is dress for the interview. Shall we look at the slide once? We have dress for the interview, business professional dress unless notified, otherwise it is okay. Carry a binder. I was telling, just carry a kind of a file where you can contain all your resumes, personal calendar, pen, and if you have any of the proofs that have to be submitted, you can also carry with them. And then you have the last one, that is very important, do not chew gum or do not take any beverages when you go for an interview, because when you carry food with you, it will be a very awkward movement when you start eating in front of the people at interview. So, never take any of the food while you go for an interview. And we were been learning how to dress, especially females. I think, yeah, you people remember, isn't it? So, let us see once again what we have learnt yesterday in the last. Yes, this was the last thing that we have been learning yesterday. Yes, dress to impress, especially women. How should actually women get dressed? Yes, navy color, grey and black suits would be suitable for women. Skirts length should be below the knee. Keep accessories to a minimum. Obviously, when you carry your wallet, obviously we can find so many accessories in your wallet. That is a very bad thing. Makeup should look natural. Choose one, handbag or briefcase. So, these are one of the most important things that we were been discussing yesterday. So, now we have finished yesterday's class and today we will be continuing our interview workshop. So, now we have been discussed about dress to impress, that is especially women, and what about men? Now we are going to learn, right. So, now let us see the slide once again. We have dress to impress, that is men. Yes, invest in a conservative color, that is buy a proper colored shirt or a kind of good combination. Check for proper fit. Wear socks that match your trousers. Clean your shoes, and at the last, the tie knot. If you are wearing a tie, make sure the tie knot should be small. Now, let me tell you about, there are not much to have for men, isn't it? Yes. So, always try to buy a conservative color, that is plain or simple color. Always try to be simple as much as possible, because that is when you will have a good impression on your first look. Let me take you with the second point, that is check for proper fit. So many people have this problem of not buying a proper fit of your body, because once you go to a store, the only thing that you look at is color. Yeah, that is the first thing, but when you buy clothes and when you wear them, you won't make sure that it is properly fit for your body, because you do not concentrate on your fit of the dress. But that is a very big problem, because when you go for the interview, when you sit in front of the HR, when your dress is not properly fitting your body, it feels very awkward while you are setting your dress again and again. So, this is a very big problem that you have to remember. These days men have come up with a very tight kind of dresses which you have to avoid, especially men, because these very tight shorts will make sure that you are very uncomfortable while sitting or when you are walking, because when you are totally have bought a shirt which is very tight, I mean if the shirt is very tight, obviously you can't handle, and obviously you can't sit wherever, or you keep adjusting your dress all the time, which makes sure the HR is really not comfortable by looking at you. So, this is the most rude thing that you do it in front of the HR. So, never do it. So, always check for a proper fit. And then so many people doesn't wear socks, that is the first thing, and if you are wearing socks, some people doesn't match their socks with their trousers. You should never do that. Always buy a socks which match your trousers, because when you sit, obviously your pant raises. When your trouser raises, you can, or anybody can see your socks. When the socks is your trouser color, it usually never give up that awkward look. But if you have an opposite color, obviously the looks will go towards that, which is unnecessary, right. So, next, clean your shoes. This is a very big problem for the men, because before going for an interview, men will not sit at one place. They keep roaming, they keep going here and there, they come, they drive. So, once you go to the destination that you have to be there, once you go there, the basic problem that you can find is your shoes will not be clean. So, immediately clean your shoes and then go for an interview. And then the last one, but not that important, if somebody is wearing the tie, make sure the knot of the tie is very small, because that is when the tie will have a good look when you are doing it. So, this is the most important thing for the men when they are especially dressing. So, now let us see the next slide. What is the next slide? If you can see here, we have during the interview, and what will happen during the interview? Can anybody just tell me? Absolutely no, isn't it? So, during the interview, what happens is always a horror movie, if I am not wrong. Yes, during the interview is always a tragedy story for you, because you will be thinking something and you will be doing something over there, because always we are nervous and we are tensed and we do not know what to do and how to perform at that particular situation. So, here I am with some tips on during the interview, right. So, now let me take you with the first interview structure in during the interview, right. Here we have pre-interview, that is where you have to set how to give, or how to greet the HR and how to introduce yourself and the small talk that you have to do before you actually get into the details of your interview. And then we have information exchange, which we have to say interview questions and responses, and then we have information sharing about employer, that is the HR, and then we have interviews questions. Closing, next steps, business card. You can ask for the business card of the HR obviously. So, when I speak about the interview structure during the interview, pre-interview, that is like before you enter or before you talk with the HR, the first thing that you have to remember is how are you greeting the HR, because once you do not know how to greet the HR, the biggest problem is the HR will feel bad or might feel that the HR obviously will feel that you are not comfortable in having the interview, or by looking at your tensed face, or by looking at your direct start of the introduction, the HR will have an awkward feeling of why is this guy or why is this girl so tensed on having an interview. That makes a wrong interview all the time. So, always remember, a greeting is a very mandatory thing that you have to remember while you are giving an interview. When I say greeting, it can be any greeting. Hello can be a greeting, good morning can be a greeting, how are you is a greeting, and any kind of greeting is a greeting when you go and greet the HR. But never forget to greet the HR, because when you do not greet the HR, it has a improper start. So, always remember that. And then the second thing that you have to remember is introduction. About the introduction, how exactly you are preparing your introduction, how exactly you are giving the introduction is also important. So, about the introduction, we have a class to speak about, do not worry about it. So, introduction, how to give an introduction, and what are that what are those which are very important in introduction, I will tell you, do not worry about it, alright. And then always remember a small talk. When I say a small talk, what small talk you are doing with the HR? It can be irrespective of the subject, it can be irrelevant to the subject, but have a basic talk with the HR so that the HR feel comfortable in having an interview with you. Because when you are little classy, when you are little comfortable in having the interview, obviously you feel the HR as your friend, and when you see your HR as a friend, obviously you can have a small talk with the HR. So, that when you reduce your tension and nervousness, right. And now information exchange. When I speak about the information exchange, what is that you have to remember in information exchange? When I speak about the information HR, information exchange, we obviously have HR and you. You should exchange some of the information with the HR. Let us see the slide once again. We have information exchange. Under information exchange, we have interview questions or responses. We have questions and responses. Obviously, when an interviewer is asking you a question, you will obviously respond with an answer, and when you ask a question, obviously interviewer would give you an answer. And the second point we have here is, if you can see, what are you actually sharing with the employer? Yes, information, and that information can be anything about the company, information sharing about employer. For example, sir, where did you work previously? You know, it's just a small talk again. You can basically ask about the HR. Sir, what is your name, or you know, from when are you working in this company, or sir, can I know your designation in this company, or anything. The small information sharing with the interviewer would also keep the interviewer engaged with you anytime and every time when you talk in the interview. So now let's go with the last point in the information exchange, and we have interviews questions. That is your questions again. So what questions are you asking to the HR is also a basic point that we have to remember, because when you don't ask questions to the HR would obviously get bored and he would never listen to you, isn't it? Yes. So always keep HR engaged by asking few questions. That is, sir, that was a really good having interview with you. How was my interview? Or you can just say, sir, can I get your good name? Or you can ask, sir, how many countries is this company located into? So you can just ask few questions irrelevant of what exactly you are asking, but related to the interview. All right. So now always remember, you also have to close an interview, isn't it? So let us see closing, and in closing what do we have? In closing, next steps, that is after the interview, what are the steps that you have to follow, and the business card, that means you can ask for a business card of the HR if he have or she have, because every time seniors or you know, people who are in the company for longer time will have business cards. So you can basically share their business cards with you, so that it will help you anytime by calling them or by asking them what is your interview status. So this is what is the most important thing that you have to remember in the interview structure. So let me take you with the pre-interview and greeting. So I said you what are the greetings and how are the greetings have to be. So now I'll explain you on how exactly the interview greetings can be. So let us go with the slide once again. Yes, you can see pre-interview and greeting out here. In pre-interview, you are being judged as soon as you arrive. Recently, we have gone through a small PPT about the body language, if I am not wrong. Yes, we have the body language. The first thing, that is firm handshake. If you can see in the image mentioned below or shown below, we have proper firm handshake. Yes, again I'll tell you this thing, that is when you move or when you go for an interview greeting, or when you are greeting, first when you enter into the room you are being judged. Never ever forget that. Irrespective of the interview and irrespective of the whole conversation that you have with the HR, the first moment when you enter into the room itself, you are judged. So always make sure that the first appearance of yours is perfect, and that can be more perfect if you can give a firm handshake to the HR. That is what a greeting is. Alright. So now let us see the next point in the pre-interview. Arrive 10 to 15 minutes early to compose yourself. Always be 10 to 15 minutes earlier than what exactly your time is, so that you can prepare for the interview. Yes. In the greeting, know the interviewer's name and pronunciation. Extend a warm greeting and firm handshake. Wait to be asked to have a seat. When I say greetings, remember these three most important things, and those are: the first one, know the interviewer's name and pronunciation. What does this mean? When I say about the pronunciation and the name obviously you can ask, so can I get your name? And pronunciation, people always remember that each HR or each interviewer would have different kind of English or different kind of language. For example, some HRs will only concentrate on your confidence, some HRs will concentrate on your English, some HRs concentrate on your confidence and you are way off attire. I mean, how exactly have you come to the interview? So when I speak all those, all are important, everything is important. Yes, so know how exactly the HR is pronunciation. How is exactly the HR pronouncing the words too, because when you know the pronunciation of the HR, you can easily develop your interview by talking with the HR. So this is the first point in the greetings, and the second point is extend a warm greeting and by a simple handshake. You know, you can say hello by giving a good handshake, or you can say good morning by giving a handshake, or how are you by giving a handshake. This can make the greeting more advanced and liked by the HR. And when I take you to the third point, always remember this third point is something which is very important and very not used by you people. So let me say you what is that. Wait actually, see, always remember when you enter into the room, you go and you directly sit in the chair, isn't it? Don't do it. Just wait to be asked to sit in the chair. Let the HR say you to sit in the chair. Till then, just stand so that you are indirectly or directly conveying your dignity levels to the HR. So that will make the first impression more better. So this is what about pre-interview and greeting. Now, when I speak about information exchange, what is that? Let us see the slide once again. We have in the information exchange, we have direct, open-ended, why questions. So indirect, we have confirms information. You know, for example, you have are you able to is something called as direct. Open-ended generates performance data. Tell me about a time when you, how did you, describe a situation where you, give me an example. Why questions, reveal preferences, motives. So when I speak about direct, confirms information. For example, are you able to work in night shifts, or will you be okay, or will you be okay to work in night shifts, or are you able to travel all the way from, you know, one place to another place which is so long, will you be able to? This is a direct question. And when I say open ended, these open ended questions will have a choice for you to decide on which answer you can give. For example, which color do you like? So this is an open ended question. You can say anything. You can say I like black, I like green, I like yellow, I like any color that you say. But close ended questions are somewhere where you will not have options. For example, which color do you like, red or yellow? Obviously you don't have options to say about your favorite color, isn't it? So you, in open ended, always remember you will have choices to answer these questions. For example, you can see here, tell me about or a time. For example, I will give you a small example for an open ended question. Tell or a time when you were in another company, or a time when you were in school, what was the most important thing that you remember? So you can say I remember the sports, you know, you can say I remember my mathematics teacher because he was one of the best faculties ever, or you can say anything, I like the school, I like my friends, or anything. See, that's what an open ended question is, because you can answer anything, but the answer is the most important thing that you have to remember. And let me give you another example. How did you get to know about this interview? Yes, of course, we can see here the second example here mentioned is how did you, and let's add a question for this. How did you know about this interview? So you can say any question. You can say, I got to know about this interview through my friend, I got to know about this interview through the social sites, I got to know about this interview through my parents. You can say anything. See, there is no option here, or there is no choice here. You can just choose, but answer in a right way and answer in a sensible way. How did you know about this interview? I didn't knew about this interview, I just came for the interview. That is a wrong answer, right? Because the HR would feel obviously awkward. Why is this he speaking like this, right? So always say, I got to know about this interview through the social site. I just have gone through an advertisement that your company have given, and I somehow know that my qualities are suitable for this post, and I just came for the interview. That would be a right answer when you speak about the open-ended answers or open-ended questions. And then we will have another example. Describe a situation where, wow, we have an example here too. Describe a situation where you have to close, or where you have to get compromised in your college and you have done. So there would be a situation, there will be many situations in your college where you have to get compromised. For example, so there was a moment where I have to compromise on the financial status of the farewell party. So I literally thought of, committing, or I literally thought of getting down at one particular time because the financial situations were very low and I felt very bad about it. So you can say anything, or describe a situation where you have to compromise on your work. You can just say, sir, yes, there was a situation where I was doing my project in B.Tech and I have to get compromised because our team was not performing and I have to do all their work. So you can just say anything which is of your own choice, but answer properly is what I just want to advise you. And the last one here, we have an example, that is, give me an example of you working hard. Can you just give it? You can just say yes. Sir, yes, I can give you an example of me working hard for the company for sure by, you can just say in your college, or you can just say, sir, whenever a work is given to me, I'll make sure it is dedicatedly done in a proper time, because whenever any work is given to me, I'll make sure that the work is done properly, because that's when I get a good name, because I don't work for money, I work for good name. That's what you can just say. And then we have why questions. If you can see the slide once again, we have why questions which reveal preferences and motives. For example, why did you choose this job? Or why exactly did you come for an interview while you're studying? Or why should I give you this job? Or why are you so interested in giving an interview at this company? There might be so many questions related to why. For that, only thing that you have to remember, don't worry, I'll tell you. Alright. So before we go ahead with the why answers, let me directly again say you about what are the information exchanges that can happen in the interview while during the interview. So let us see the slide once again. We have direct, open-ended and why questions, which can actually be used to information exchange, which basically you can exchange your information with the HR to have a good talk. So now, when I say about during the interview, the only thing that you have to remember is, yes, information exchange, and after the information exchange you have something which is very important, that is, tell me about yourself. When I say about tell me about yourself, yes, this is the most important thing that every HR will ask you, and this is a known question by everybody. So let us see what is important in tell me about yourself. So here we have a dreaded but very common question. Importance. First, impression still, malleable, tone of interview, provide depth to resume, insight into who you are. Share information the employer may not already know and present it in a way that connects to the position you are seeking. So, I haven't mentioned anything that is about the interview here, but what is that which is very important while giving your personal introduction? When I say PI, personal introduction, the only thing you people forget is you always try to say the same thing which obviously people are doing every common day. Guys, remember one thing, for you it is the first interview, or for you the HR is new, but do you think for the HR are you new? No. For the HR, he will be or she will be looking at so many people like you. So, make sure what is that which is not common from you by the others. So, when I say this, obviously you have to say something which is relevant to the job position you are seeking, or do something, every person have different skills. Some person might have good tone. For example, you can be very bold, you can be very nice and talking. Some people can be very calm and very intensive that the HR will feel so comfortable in having your interview. And always remember, provide some depth in your resume, because obviously in resume you can have all the details on top of it, but when you go deep in your resume and when you explain them, obviously the HR will feel that you are saying something which is not related or which is already there on the resume. Insight into who you are. Tell the HR something about you which is amazing and which is real, because when you say something which is not common in others, obviously the HR will feel that this person is not a common interviewer, that he is doing it. So, always remember, have a different sight when you go for an interview. All right. So, this is what you just have to remember, especially when you go for the interview. And about the personal introduction, don't worry about the personal introduction, we have another class where I will be clearly telling you about the introduction and how to actually go with the why questions too. So, don't worry about it, I will go brief after some classes. So, we have the next slide as direct questions. And what are these direct questions? Let us see the slide once again. If you can see, direct questions often require only a short answer with minimal elaboration, right? Let us see some examples. Are you able to? Are you willing to relocate? Are you willing to travel? So, now when I say about these direct questions, every time the problem with us is when we speak or when we answer the direct questions, you try to elaborate it. For example, I have recently seen a person who have gone for an interview. A person, when he have gone for an interview, when the HR is asking them, are you willing to relocate? The person who is answering the question is actually telling that, sir, I am willing to travel, but until and unless I speak with my parents, if my parents say yes, then I will come back and communicate with you about these, those and all. So, when I say all this, or when the person tries to communicate, this is what which should not happen in the direct questions. So, always remember, whenever you are talking or whenever you are actually communicating the direct question to the HR, when the HR says you, are you willing to travel, you should always say yes, I am okay with it. So, that is what the answer should be. Do not elaborate too much which is not really the point at that particular situation. So, always make sure you answer with one question or one answer and directly start off. So, that is what is the most important thing in the direct questions and how to answer them. And when I say about behavioral interviewing, when I speak about behavioral interviewing, let us see the slide once again. We have The best predictor of future performance is past performance in similar situation. Provide specific examples or situations based on actual past behaviors instead of based on responses to hypothetical questions. And what is this meaning? I will tell you. The best predictor of future performance is past performance in similar situation. For example, how can you know that you will perform good in this company? At that particular point, you should give an example of your previous or the similar situations you had in your college that you have overcome. So, when you give an example that you have overcome with that particular situation, obviously the HR would feel that situation is actually compared to this situation and it will collide to your performance. So, always remember, always have a past example where you have performed well. For example, I will tell you why should, or I will just give you a basic example. How can I know that you are the best performer? So, you can say, sir, at my college level, I remember there was a situation where the project was given to me and we were 4 as a team. But while the project was happening, all the 3 have left the project because of some personal issues. At that particular point, I haven't given up. You should say, I never have give up. All that I have done is took some more time, but have done alone to prove that I can perform. So, this is what an example that can make the HR feel good about it. So, this is the most important thing when I say about behavioral performances. And now, I just want to ask you, are you a star? Or when I say are you a star or are you a performer? Obviously, we have been knowing that in our bottom levels everywhere we get a star, and what exactly the star means I will tell you. So, let us see the slide once again. Your response strategy, the STAR technique. STAR is nothing but situation, task, action, result. So, now tell me, are you a star? Yes. When you act according to the situation, when given task is properly done, and when you have a proper action which result good, then you are called a star. So, always have your response strategy as a STAR technique. First, know the situation, understand the task, have a good action and give a good result. So, these are the most important techniques that you have to remember whenever you go for an interview. During the interview, the STAR technique will always help you in understanding and responding the interviewer. So, this is the most important thing. So, now let me go deep into the STAR technique. So, let us see the slide once again. We have situation. During my internship last summer, I was responsible for managing various events. Task. I noticed that attendance at these events had dropped by 30% over the past 3 years and wanted to do something to improve these numbers. Action. I designed a new promotional package to go out to the local community business. I also included a rating sheet to collect feedback on our events and organized internal roundtable discussions to raise awareness of the issue with our employees. Result. I was able to incorporate many of the ideas from the community as well as make the internal systems more efficient and visible. I am proud to report that attendance increased by 18%. Amazing, isn't it? So, what have we looked at this situation? So, always remember people, when I say STAR technique, know the situation. For example, I have already mentioned here, there was a situation where we had an internship program where the attendance was very low, and then task was to make sure that the attendance go a little higher, and action was something where we had a round table conference and have gathered so many people and have gone to mobilization and made sure that every person have come up with the actions, and the result is obviously 18% increase in the attendance. So, this is what is the STAR technique. Never ever forget the STAR technique, because this is a technique which is being used by each and every company at typical times. So, this is a STAR technique that you have to remember, and we have so many things that we can remember while interviews are happening. So, let us quickly go through the do's and don'ts at the interview, during the interview. So, if you can see here, do, what should you do? Convey enthusiasm, confidence and friendliness when you are giving the interview. Convey maturity and professionalism. Know your nervous body language tendencies and avoid them. Be articulate. Take time to reflect if necessary before answering. Be aware of your eye contact. And don'ts: be negative, don't use ums and likes, and don't lie. Have your cell phone turned on. Never ever switch on your phone whenever you are in the interview. Never ever interrupt the interviewer when he is talking or she is talking. Never ever go on a debate. Don't use acronyms. Alright. So, now when I speak about do's and don'ts of the interview, during the interview, never ever try to follow, or else, you know, I'll just give you a few examples what you just have to follow in the interview. Yes, of course, make sure you are probably very enthusiastic and confidently good in answering the questions, and few things that I have said you is be, you know, real confident, and make sure whatever points, or when you are nervous, obviously one of your body parts will shake. For example, some people have a hobby of shaking their legs, or whenever they are whenever they have a tendency to get nervous, they usually get a nervous feeling on their hands, or sometimes they can't talk. So, make sure you overcome all this, okay. And don'ts: never argue with the HR, don't be negative, and don't use your phone, and don't argue or debate with the HR. So, these are the don'ts of the interview while asking or while during the interview. So, asking good questions may also help you in going with the interview. So, today we have learned about few interviews and things and do's and don'ts while happening in the interview. So, always remember people, when you are going for an interview, make sure we have learnt about before the interviews and while going the interviews what and how exactly we have to perform. So, this is what about today's class was, and never ever forget about what we have learnt and what we have listened today in the class. Make sure you share the video to your friends, whoever is a necessary of the interview. So, thank you so much for listening to me and my class patiently and supporting me. Thank you so much, and I am Kranth and I am a trainer.